All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming back to listen to this episode of Owning Your Sexual Self. We have on a very cool guest today. I'm very excited to get into this. We have the advisor of Arya. You might have seen their social media ads popping up. They do like a delivery box for you to spice up your sex life. But our guest today is also an authentic Tantra practitioner. So we're going to get into that, as well as an ABS certified sexologist. No big deal. No big deal, right?
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm super
Yes.
excited to get into all of this. It's so juicy and
Yes.
yummy.
Yes. Thank you so much, Tucha, for coming on to the show today. I'd love to hear a little bit, yeah, just about you, like why, because you're bridging the Eastern and the Western worlds right together, like so beautifully. It's like combining
Mhm.
Tantra with science. Can you tell us like what drew you to this work in the first place?
Totally, totally. I feel like many sexologists, my path has been a little unconventional. So I didn't really take the clinical route as I was entering the space. I actually come from a consulting background. I used to be in like the sustainability and environmental consulting space for a long time. And I think the major theme there that was coming up as I was trying to understand like our relationship with the environment was why was it so um, distorted? Like why are we, what's this, bridge there? And I think I kind of came to this conclusion of like, we're so disconnected from the environment because we're so disconnected from ourselves and our relationships, which kind of made me pivot into relationships and looking more into it. And I will say, like, outside of that, I've been fascinated with just, I think like anyone, like how we build relationships, how does sex play into all of this? So, right before COVID, I quit my corporate job and I kind of did this like 180 pivot without any real plan. I was like, I'm just going to be a sexologist. Everyone's like, okay, girl, like whatever you say. Um, but then I kind of went into it from the Eastern tradition. So I actually was studying Tantra. So, and we can unpack that a little bit later.
Yeah,
But
sure.
within Tantra, I study Tibetan Buddhism, and within that, there's a specific lineage I study. And in that, they basically believe that sexuality is a key component of healing um, and building your energy body, let's say, and connecting and all of this. So as I was studying that, there was so much sexuality involved in that that I also decided to pursue like my sexology degree and also to just understand that like our industry is still pretty new, I would say, right? That we like in terms of research, in terms of our understanding of our human sexuality, in terms of just all the information and experiences. I wanted to enter this from a space of like holistic lens and like looking at the human, not just mentally, but like emotionally, energetically, and how that kind of plays into like the day-to-day life of someone who is just, going about their 9 to 5 and has kids and, has to deal with life. And um, yeah, so I enter it from a very like somatic and embodied space rather than more of like a clinical space, is what I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. It's like blending it all together. And I especially love the fact that you mentioned like our sexuality is such an important part of our healing. I think most times when I think of my practice, when I'm meeting with clients, they're like, I've done all the personal development, right? I've done the mental health, I've done the physical health. And it's like it's usually the sex piece that is the missing piece. And they're like, I think I'm onto something here. I think that like exploring this, right, it is the most intimate part of your life. You mentioned like sex relationships, right? It's like this is what we do. This is how most of us got here, right? Some form of
Totally.
sexuality, some form of intimacy.
Totally.
So
And
yeah.
I really believe that like it's a core belief that I was like, pondering on for like a couple of years that like I think sexuality really is one of the most common wounds that we all have as like as a species. Like I
Mhm.
think whether it's, conditioned through like education, religion, your experiences, your family, everybody has a sort of like holding and wounding. And I think you're absolutely right. There's like decisions that we make that we don't even realize are like tied to
Mhm.
that wounding. And it's just expressed in different ways. But once I've kind of seen that fact and like you kind of step back, you can totally see like how things play
Mhm.
out
Mhm.
in society and relationships and, in your personal life. So
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, getting a little bit deeper into the world of Tantra, you talk about something that is known as authentic Tantra. And I'm curious, like, what that really means versus more of like the mainstream, like, misconceptions of what Tantra is.
Yeah, yeah, this could be a whole podcast on its own, but I'll
Yeah.
keep it short for I get a bit spicy and fiery for this. So I think most of us, when we're exposed to the world of Tantra, especially in North America, it's actually through the lens of like Neo Tantra, which is a form of I believe appropriation of Tantra. It's, people take this, and they're like, here's this like spiritual practice. But Tantra, if we go back to the roots of it, there's multiple different forms of Tantra. There's different lineages of Tantra, right? So it's not just this like one thing. It's like, it can be there's common practices, but it's very unique. And I think you have to kind of pay homage to the lineage. So I practice authentic lineage-based tantra because from where I studied, which is the Institute of Authentic Tantra, they were really focused on, it being rooted in lineage, it being rooted in anti-racism, it being like rooted in like actually having a lama. And I specifically study what's called the Tibetan five elements. So in North America, we're all very familiar with like the chakra system of like the seven chakra system.
Mm-hmm.
This system it uses five chakras, which are the five elements. So water, air, space, earth, and fire.
Mm-hmm.
And we use this, and our understanding of the world is very similar to like what happens inside, happens outside. And we use kind of the elements to balance our energy body. So this is kind of the approach that I take when I'm teaching, studying, living,
Mm-hmm.
practicing Tantra.
Mm-hmm.
So Tantra means to weave light, sound, and form, just so we know what it means.
Yeah.
So what that means is when we meditate, for me, I actually meditate with my eyes open. So you're taking in light and you're weaving in light, sound, which is the mantra that you chant when you practice,
Mm-hmm.
with form, which is your physical body. So it's
Mm-hmm.
using all those components to
Mm-hmm.
really come back to your heart space and live from your heart space rather than your head space, is what I
Mm.
would say. Hopefully
Yeah.
that made sense.
Yeah, I'm a little mind blown over here because I'm like, shit, I've been doing it wrong because
You're
with
like, let's book a
the
call.
yeah, even the eyes open, I'm like, oh, I often yeah, maybe it's a lie I'm telling myself, but like I close my eyes when I'm meditating or breath work or anything because I feel like that helps me like go more with
Yeah,
it, like drop into my body more.
and I think like everybody's body, the medicine we all need, the way we connect and embody are really different.
Hmm.
And that's like really common and it works for so many people. There's something in, I think, having your eyes open, it conditions your energy body and your mind and your physical body, I think, to be like our meditative state is not different from our day-to-day like
Hmm.
life. So you're really bridging that gap rather than, really needing this like beautiful space where you have mood lights and music and like you can
Hmm.
close your eyes and really drop in, which is sometimes what you need. But it's kind of taking that away and being like every moment of every second is actually this blissful flow that you can get into with Tantra.
Hmm.
And there's
Hmm.
actually no difference. And you can tap into the space of, you've probably felt it when you're meditating, you have this like euphoric feeling like that is accessible to you at any given time. So
Hmm.
how do we build that into our practice so that we can access it a little bit faster?
Yeah. Yeah, now and I won't stay on this too much, but I'm thinking like I've meditated with like blindfolds or even more recently, like I was getting a facial when we were on vacation and they put like the nice like warm cloth over your
Hmm.
over your eyes and it's so relaxing. I could feel myself like dropping into that meditative state and but then noticing like, oh, my eyes are actually open, but it still felt dark
Mm.
because something was still covering them.
Hmm.
But yeah, I
That's
always like kind of
interesting.
go through a mind focus. I'm like, oh, I can still see the colors and I can still see the things and anyways,
I
we don't
love
have to go
that.
into that, but in short,
Really cool.
yeah, the so Tantra can really help support right, like holistic healing, right? This we're talking like
Hmm.
emotional, physical, spiritual level.
Hmm.
Can you say more to that, like how this helps us in the healing realm?
Totally. So the way I practice Tantra, it's based on four pillars. So it's based on connection, meditation, movement, and pleasure. So with those pillars, there's multiple different ways of healing. Again, when we look at healing, I look at it from a holistic lens of like healing your energy body, healing your physical body. You kind of have to, enter it from different spaces. Um, Focusing on like pleasure specifically and like why I'm such a big advocate for making pleasure practices, connection practices, more accessible to everyone, which is, kind of tied to my work with like Arya as well,
Hmm.
is because pleasure and connection is the fastest way for our body to actually heal. So rather than pleasure being like an end goal that you get to, connection being an end goal that you get to, you
Hmm.
kind of use it as a vehicle to train your nervous system to heal. So when we look at it like somatically, the pleasure state is the only state that your body can't override with
Mhm.
like an anxiety state, or you can't feel pleasure and like be anxious or be kind of like dissociated if you're really rooted in it.
Mhm.
So we kind of take that lens and unpack the word pleasure as well, right? Like I think when we talk about like words like sex, intimacy, pleasure, it's all associated with like singular things.
Mhm.
Um, and then movement, because, our body holds so much trauma. We know that like even though people go through therapy, and I'm sure you've also kind of experience this in your practice with your clients is, they say like I've done all the work, I've talked to my therapist for years now, and there's still something in
Mhm.
me that like I don't know what that is. So how do we incorporate movement and flow and bring in that like embodiment to really open up the body, to really build trust in the body,
Mhm.
connection, because we're all wired for connection. That's the default mode, especially in a world today where I think we're all living pretty disconnected, both from our hearts, because everybody's up in their head, and with each other. How do we bring back that like natural state of how human experience should flow? How do we co-regulate with one another? Like how do we look at each other's eyes and we're like breathing together? This is like all encoded
Mhm.
in our DNA of like how we're
Mhm.
moving and living. And then, so I said pleasure, connection, movement, and meditation. Meditation, because, a regulated, you can't have a regulated pleasure state without a regulated,
Mhm.
nervous system. So how do we bring in the body and the nervous system? And how do we really use our attention and our focus, which is the only thing that we have, our
Mhm.
energy, for that healing, essentially.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah.
No, that was perfect. Yeah, this is like such a common theme too on the show around just bringing more pleasure into our life and letting pleasure lead our life, letting us feel more into pleasure. And it's not even just the
Mm,
sexual pleasure realm of pleasure, right? Like I just here
yeah.
took a drink of my drink and it's like immediately like it goes down my throat. I'm like, oh, I like, love the taste of this. It's so good. Like to me, that's pleasure. Looking here across like at my dogs, they're so freaking cute right now. Like that's pleasure. That brings me so much
Hmm.
joy.
Hmm.
And so it's like, yeah, I think in recent conversation, I was just recorded yesterday or Monday rather on a episode around anorgasmia. And same thing there. It's like if we can take the pressure off of orgasm, we could take the pressure off of performance and just focus on the pleasure and let ourselves like really, as you're saying, like connect with the pleasure and embody the pleasure that we're feeling.
Totally.
I love that you made that reference of like if we're in this state of pleasure, like anxiety does not exist, fear does not exist, worry does not exist, all these things. It's like yeah, what human doesn't want more of that?
Totally, totally. And I think, yeah, I love that. Like, I think it's also such a like radical way of living. I really believe that like, once you center pleasure and and I agree with you, like it's not just sexual pleasure. You have sensual pleasure, intellectual pleasure, emotional pleasure. Like it can really bleed into all facets of like how you move in life. It's
Mhm.
such a radical way of living because, I think the world really tells you to be a certain way. It really tries to put us in a box and like really make it rigid, and like life is hard, like shit's going on in the world, like and it doesn't take away from all that. It's like acknowledging all of that and also acknowledging where you are and like how can you soften? How can you open a little bit more? How can you regulate yourself? And it's all tied to like the mental health conversation, which we don't have to get into like now. But I
Mhm.
do think it's like a really radical way of like when you prioritize pleasure, and this is like personally and for couples, right? When you say
Mhm.
we're gonna prioritize our connection, our pleasure, I think that's when like a lot of magic and like shift happens in dynamics and in your life.
Mhm. Yeah, so you're really, yeah, all of this conversation like leading us to like why pleasure is so essential to wellness and overall health for people. I'm curious, so for somebody that's listening to this and they're maybe feeling disconnected to pleasure, and wanting to start to incorporate this more, what would you say have is for them is like a gentle start for them to reconnecting with this part of themselves?
I would say, instead of going into the sexual side first, it's good to, I think, tap into other forms of pleasure, just so we can expand our understanding of pleasure. So
Mhm.
once we, the brain scans for what it knows. So once you say, it's not just this, but there's multiple forms of pleasure, your brain will start scanning for that. So kind of like what you said, I think I always introduce this pleasure scale to people. So instead of saying like this is pleasurable, this is not pleasurable, if you think of your pleasure scales from like a 1 to 10, and knowing that there's different forms of pleasure, let's say sensual, let's say emotional, intellectual, all of this. Let's say you wake up in the morning and you're going about your day and you're going to have your cup of coffee. You can kind of do a little check-in on like, where am I on my pleasure scale right now? This is a 6. Okay, what would make this a 10 for me? Okay, if I add a bit of cinnamon and if I take a blanket and if I don't know, go outside and like drink it on my porch, for example, it's one like this is kind of asking like where am I at my pleasure scale and what can I do to take that up a notch? Maybe it's not always a 10, but how can I increase it? Like kind of reorients like how you view pleasure.
Mm.
One, in terms of it's expanded. Two, in terms of you are meeting your needs for pleasure. So you're not outsourcing it all the time. And three, there's this like ongoing continuation of like where am I at? Like where
Mm.
am I at? It's like a different way of checking in rather than I guess being like, am I good? Am I not good? How does this make me feel? So the pleasure scale is quite easy, like low-hanging fruit, I
Mhm.
would say for anyone to incorporate. And I think it becomes kind of like a default mode. And it just like increases your quality of experience, right? Like if you're cooking
Mhm.
something, if you're with a friend, if you're just kind of checking in, you're like, you know what would be nice if we had some like, I don't know, strawberries, if we had music, you're just kind of like bringing in that like
Mhm.
energy. And the more you're bringing that energy and invite it, I think the more we're kind of fine-tuning our frequency to match to that like
Mhm.
playful pleasure, frequency. So
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think of like so in our relationship, like we like to do baths together. Or we now recently got a hot tub together that we get to share that time with, and thinking it's like, yeah, we could just get in the hot tub or we could just get in the bath together. But it is the times where I remember one time like I made us a nice like little charcuterie board to take in there with like chocolates and fruits, and that we added bubbles and we had a candle lit. We did the red light bulb in there instead of regular lighting. Like it was such a vibe, and so yeah, that I think that is such an experience. Or even your coffee reference, like how many sips of your coffee do you take in that one cup? But it's like, yeah, if you could, it's almost like ritualizing it a little bit. Like
Totally,
how, yeah,
totally.
how can I make this? And one of my colleagues, Molly Eames, always says, like, how can I make this 2% better? Like, how can we just increase 2%? Like, it's not a big ask. And
Yeah.
I always appreciate, so I find myself asking, like, okay, how can we just make this a little better? Eating, I like to eat and drink things because I've made so
Same
many
though.
better
Same
things.
though.
But like
Listen,
just
I've
doing like a little jig, like when I'm eating, it's like,
yeah.
or moaning even, like that
Yeah.
just enhances the experience. That's bringing in more pleasure for ourselves.
And like more intentionality and more focus. And like that's something that, is so easy to just like disregard. And like once you kind of bring that in, I mean, even if it's like 1 second of it, I think that really just drops you back into your body, that connects you with your partner. So yeah, I think the more we prioritize and the more we expand,
Mhm.
um, the more we are going to get more of it. And it
Yeah.
just kind of compounds and builds over time. So yeah, I
Mhm.
love that.
Mhm.
I love that.
Mhm.
Sacred space,
Yeah.
intentionality, ritualizing, like you said.
Yeah.
Totally.
Absolutely. And I want to kind of transition a little bit because I feel a lot of our conversation so far is like we can do so many things to ourselves on an individual level. I like that you said like there's so much that we can give to ourselves without outsourcing that. But moving in now to like a couple's focus of this, you say that there's 57% of couples that can't talk about sex, let
Yeah.
alone maybe like even diving into like this more niche area of tantric sex or tantric intimacy. What do you see are some of these root causes? Like what is the shame that is happening for people, or taboos or gender expectations that are coming up around this?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's everything that you mentioned. I think, there is the lack of education, right? So none of us are taught like how to have like healthy relationships. So that's one. I think there is the lack of maybe sensation or like blocks around our own sexuality. So, if anybody's experiencing any dysfunctions or there's pain or there's painful experiences, that's going to be like a really quick like roadblock too. And also, I think it's just like the current world we live in. I mean, it's, it's so easy to deprioritize this, once you're, especially if you've been married for a long time and you have kids and like there's just so much going on that because of all of this, you're like, I don't even want to go there. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
it's just one more thing on my bucket list. And it's probably one of the things that we need the most, because connection is what nourishes us, especially when you look at long-term couples. And also, as people are together for a long time, desires change. What you want changes. Your body changes. What you respond to, what you like in terms of stimulation changes. So, how do you navigate these conversations and kind of have them without having the fear of like offending your partner or like really connecting to your own desire? Sometimes you need to bring in someone or something to like help
Mhm.
you, right? Like, and sometimes people try therapy, yes. I mean, we know that like number one reason why couples seek therapy is mismatched libido and
Mhm.
it's around sex. So, you know, I think like just transitioning a bit to Arya, what really drew me in, because I have been in the sex tech space and I've worked with other sex startups, is this was just so unique because one, we don't really have a lot of um, technology bridging relationships.
Mm,
Like we have a lot of sexual wellness that's focused on males, that's focused on females, but we don't really have anything out here that's really trying to understand couples and help them like bridge these troubles that they're having. So I I was like super fascinated. I joined Arya in January. I was super fascinated. I love that, they try to kind of take the guesswork. They are the ones that kind of step in and make the suggestions. So it's really low lift for two people to be like, well, it's not me. It's not we are our Arya like concierge wants us to talk about this. I think it's a really, really good way for couples to get into some conversations without having that nervousness or that edge because they're like, but look, this like thing that we signed up for, this service, it wants us to talk about XYZ. So I find it's been like transformative also just like working with the concierge and just seeing how couples respond,
mhm,
how just a little prompt can really open up like so much for people.
mhm.
So sometimes people need an external source and sometimes it's not just like a therapist. Sometimes I think you can have it at the comfort of your own home at your own terms.
Yeah.
So it just depends on where couples are at, but yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's again, I had shared like I've really seen a lot of the ads and I've seen some of the boxes and experiences that it's giving to couples, which I think is it's really like pushing the bar. I think getting people outside of their comfort zone is also a big part
Totally,
of this.
totally.
Even, in the program that I work with and I coach for, it's like doing something like evolve a mapping or I've some of the ads I've seen were like doing the role play, like going out and act like you're meeting for the first time with each other, the body paints and things like that. It's like sex is play, right? Like we get to have adventure,
That
there's
part.
novelty in it, and I think that's part of where the pressure comes from so many people is like we think it needs to like be so structured and has to look a certain way and both people need to come at the same time or both people need to come at all and like just there's so many societal pressurized things that
Totally.
come onto us.
Totally. And like I think what's super special about Arya is, I mean, like when you sign up, we go through and you kind of go through, as we know, like love languages, you kind of go through this quiz that gives your intimacy language, your erotic persona. So there's like an understanding of people just actually approach intimacy and enjoy intimacy in different ways, right? So that's like one layer. And then what's cool is like Shan always says this, like monogamy is natural, but monotony isn't. So, like, how do you incorporate that like play? And
Hmm.
sometimes when you have life, when you have a 9 to 5, when you have kids, we have to run a household, you have to take care of your parents. Like, there is really no time to like think about creatively, like, what should I do to really spice up my love life? I mean, it's such a mental load.
Hmm.
So what's nice is like once we understand what you like, what your partner likes, we kind of know what you want to explore. The fact that this is just like a curated experience for you online that's
Hmm.
different every month that you can just try and at least you're trying it together. And if you don't like it, then you're like, well, like our concierge said it. So it's like no pressure. It's like so low lift and like high reward. It's
Hmm.
cool because maybe then you get to try things that you weren't didn't even think that you were going to be into. So I really loved I really love this because what you said, like the element of play is one
Hmm.
that's really hard to drop into
Hmm.
when we're in our heads. So I think Arya really does a good job of like helping people just like drop into their hearts. It really, in my mind, like when my work with it and how it kind of ties into like the whole tantra thing is like it really decenters actually sex. It's not about like let's have more sex, let's have more sex. It's like how do we connect better? How do we deepen our understanding of each other? How do we really explore our edges at our own levels of like comfort? I think there's something for everyone. I mean, there's some scenes that I go to and I'm like, oh my God, like I didn't even know this. And I thought I knew everything, right? So I think it's a really cool experience that's quite low lift for couples that's very accessible. And I love that it's accessible because accessibility is also,
Hmm.
something that we don't have when therapy is so expensive. And,
Hmm.
I think sometimes trying things like this help before you maybe want to go and like speak to someone like one on one.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they all like just really work well together. So
Yeah.
I do therapy and I do coaching for a program as well. And I think accessibility is super important. I'm thankful enough like I get to accept insurance for people in Michigan and Ohio.
Yeah.
That's where I live. And but
Yes.
I know oftentimes they can't. Like some insurances will reject the billing for sex therapy, which is bullshit for any insurance companies that are listening to this.
Agreed. Agreed.
But
And yeah,
yeah.
and we work with a lot of therapists as well, right? Like I
Mhm.
think it's not one or the other, but it's just like the more resources we have, right? The more I think people can pick and choose of where they're at in their life and feel that support as well. I agree with you. I think again, for an industry where there's like such lack of research and accessibility, having these resources, having coaches, having therapists, having these kind of memberships where it's like so accessible from your phone, like everything helps. It's just finding where you're at with your partner, what kind of rhythm you want to build into, like if you have space, and then like how do we schedule for
Mhm.
those things? Yeah.
Yeah. And if you think of the concept, right, of a sexless marriage, so couples that are having sex once a month or less, or
Mm-hmm.
sexless relationships rather, you think about something like this subscription box, like at minimum you're getting that monthly experience. Of course, when you receive the box, you actually need to open the box and act on it and like do the things in the box. But I think that what I hear from most couples is that when they start to dip their toe in that and when they just prioritize it, even if they are starting off with just like monthly, like for something like this, they're creating that excitement again. They're creating that fun with in connection with each other again. And they over time, and sometimes it's more quickly than other times, but they begin to crave that more. It's like, hey, that was really fun. Like maybe we can do the experience that was in the box again. It doesn't just have to be a one or done. Or this led me, I remember like going to a retreat and learning about shibari rope tying, something that in the past I'd been so freaked out by. I was like, no fucking way am I getting tied up with rope. It's gonna hurt. Like, and I went to this experience. I got to be in the experience, but that led me down to like, okay, what are these other kinky things? Like, what does it feel like? Like, how does a flogger feel on my skin? How does dripping
Mm-hmm.
wax feel on my skin? Like, how
Mm-hmm.
does that look like in our partnership? And so I think, yeah, I love experiences like this because it really opens up the door for creativity for individuals and couples.
Totally, totally. And like, I think what's unique is like, yes, we, ship you the goods to like make this
Mhm.
experience happen. But even before that, like the concierge service that I work with a lot is kind of this like, um, you're like one-on-one kind of safe space to talk about these
Mhm.
things. Like, I think when we especially like think about like AI now, like if you try like ChatGPT and, like any other like platform, Gemini, whatever, we know that like, our industry, like it's so heavily censored. And again, there's a lack of information. So actually, when you try to inquire more than just like the basic general whatever,
Mhm.
people say, like, oh, we can't give you this. Like, this is not
Yep.
something that is available on our platform. And then when you like switch to something like Arya, so again, we're like texting, there's real people behind it. And we use AI to like kind of enhance, like try to understand you more and more. But there's like a human element of like, we're talking to you. So even before your scene arrives, right? Like there's an online experience that you
Mhm.
can like talk to your partner with, watch together, and like really build that anticipation. I think sometimes, we always have like the scene unlocks first and then like your boxes ship later. So there's this like period of like waiting, anticipating, like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? We know that like our Shibari scene is coming up. Oh my God,
Mhm.
no, let's watch this. Okay, we're watching the expert talk about it. Oh my God. So there's like that period. It's also something that doesn't give you like the instant gratification, right? So I think
Mhm.
that also
Mhm.
builds a lot. And then people like, I always talk to people that are like, okay, I'm like waiting for my scene. It's really exciting. I'm nervous. So you kind of allow yourself to go through this like cycle of emotions that arise with like your curiosity and has a
Mhm.
bit more time to explore like, wow, I'm like really excited for this like wax play. Like, where's that coming from? And like, I
Mhm.
think it's an interesting like self-exploration as well as like connection with someone else when we give space and like room for that to arise as well. So super
Mhm.
cool. I completely agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're intriguing me more and more. Like I said, I've been seeing it pop up and I've been curious about it for a while and I was like,
This is your sign to
yeah, I
sign
think
up.
this is a sign. I think I just need to pull the trigger and try it and yeah, I think that would be super fun.
Totally.
So, yes, I know as we're getting sort of to the end here, like this has been so interesting. Again, I just love all your perspective on this. If again, so for somebody that's listening to this conversation and they're hoping to understand Tantra better and the role of the pleasure, like what do you hope that people take away from this?
I think what I would hope people take away is um, everything starts with like connection with yourself. So
Mhm.
if you're curious to tap into pleasure and connection, it doesn't have to be this like big thing. I think it starts in the small moments. So I would say first start with connecting with yourself and then build from that. And sometimes I think we consume so much information like you know what you know, like your body is wired for pleasure. So at some point, just close everything off and just create space to just be in your body. I would say that's the main takeaway. And prioritize your pleasure, because if you don't prioritize it, it's not going to happen. So
Mhm.
really make it and see it as a form of self-care and try to, it's like going to the gym. You kind of have to get into it. And then once you get into it and attune to it, it's just going to be better and better and better. But there's going to be that like block at first, just because of all the conditioning that you have to kind of like work back from. But if you
Mhm.
prioritize it and see it as self-care, I think there's a lot of opportunity to deepen your understanding about your own self and your own sexuality, as well as like your partner.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think we gave some good tips in here too around like the either the 2% or bringing in more pleasure in different
Totally.
outlets for people. So I'm hoping that yeah, people listening today are really getting some good tips and good takeaways because yeah, if this episode also gave us anything, it's just how important our pleasure is to our overall health and healing
Well-being.
and wellness. Yeah, all of that.
Totally. Totally.
Yes. Well, thank you so much again. If yeah, so are people, do you work directly with people? Do you have a website for people to go to, or would we connect them with Arya?
Yeah,
And
I would say we can connect them with Arya because I'm like full time their in-house sexologist now.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you can search me as well. Like my handle is, maybe you can write it because it's
Yes, I'll put it in the show
like
notes.
you'll link the handle. But if not, like if people are curious for Arya and they want to learn more, I'm also, featured in most of like the online content as well.
Mhm.
And we do a lot of like bridging of this like Eastern and Western, worlds. Then people can just Google Arya.fyi and I'm sure will come up. We're
Mhm.
everywhere, waiting for you.
Yes, I'm waiting for you. We're ready for you.
Come join the membership.
Yes, yes,
Yes,
yes. Yeah,
come
I'll
join
make
the
sure to
fun.
link both your Instagram and the website to get to Aria for them.
Awesome.
Um, and yeah, thank you again so much. This was really a great conversation. I appreciate you and the work that you're doing and what Aria is working towards. I think it's really great.
Thank you so much. I super appreciate having this conversation. It was such a pleasureful conversation. I feel so like positive and charged. So I thank you for having me on. It was awesome.
Yes, wonderful.
Thank you.